Hi everyone, this is Arnav versus Oswald, um, 2019 Perth Chess Academy, Term 1, Round 1. Played on the 16th of February. Let's get into it. D4, knight f6, bishop f4. And I'm looking ahead at the moves that are coming. White's not really trying to play for an advantage. It looks like White's just trying to set up a solid position. And his opponent's very strong, so I guess it's understandable. As White, though, I would prefer if you played something like c4 and actually try to gain a big foothold in the center. I think playing a bit more aggressively as White is the way, is the correct thing to do, because you do have that first move advantage, and you got to try and use it. With bishop f4, you're not going to lose a game by playing this, but you're not really trying to push an advantage in the opening, and I think that's what White should be doing every game. Okay, d5, e3, so yes, this is just solid stuff. It's just dead equal. I need to turn the analysis on. There we go. Bishop d3, yeah. So it looks like White is trying to just keep the position nice and simple. Psychologically, it's probably a good choice, considering his opponent is a much higher rated and considered a much stronger player in general. So bishop, and so he's just swapping pieces off. I don't know if I like that swap off. You're just giving your opponent a H file for their rook, and it makes castling kingside very uncomfortable. I think best is just to leave it there. A lot of the time, taking is not a good idea. I hope you've all heard the phrase "to take is a mistake." Generally, you want your opponent taking you, so he takes your bishop, and you can get your queen developed with the same move. By taking his bishop, he gets his rook developed. So whoever takes generally is losing a move, because their opponent is developing a piece without wasting a move. White has to waste a move taking the bishop, so Black wastes a move taking it back, but Black's move isn't a waste because it's releasing the rook. Whereas if it had been the reverse and Black had have taken the bishop, Black is wasting a move taking the bishop, and White is wasting a move bringing the queen out. But it's not really a wasted move, because it's developing the queen. And now, after a quick knight development, you've got e4 ideas, and queen b5 check and stealing this pawn. There's all sorts of threats there that Black now has to be careful of. So generally, whoever takes is wasting a move. Okay, let's get into it. Takes, knight f3. Okay, so solid stuff. Yeah, so here's the thing. He's just gone and castled straight into it, but this is a bit uncomfortable with this rook sitting here. I would not be too happy if I was White. This is a constant worry that, maybe 5 or 10 moves down the track, a queen or a knight is going to be able to get in here and start threatening some things against this pawn. Oops, not that straight away, obviously. It's still fine. You look at the engine, it says it's a slight advantage to Black, but nothing major. C5. So let's see. White's got a bishop and knight out. Black's only got a knight out, and he's playing c5. Not sure if I agree with this. I think maybe developing would be a better idea. We'll just ignore the engine, which is saying knight c6. I think that's not a very good move at all. Maybe knight bd7. I just want to get your position. You just get yourself developed a little bit first before trying to play c5. It should be okay. But yeah, I generally prefer developing before striking in the center. Knight c3. I do not think the knight belongs on this square here. So yeah, maybe just c3 would be the way to go. Just play c3. It lets the queen come out, and then you can play knight here, and you've got a pretty safe setup. The one problem with c3, of course, is that you're left with very weak light squares. But once you traded off your bishop, that was always going to be a problem. Maybe can you just play knight bd7 here? And the idea is to just try and play c4 yourself and have a big giant pawn battle in the middle of the board here. It's hard to tell, but I don't like the knight being on c3. I think it opens it up to possibilities of, once these pawns get swapped off, the bishop coming out here and harassing the knight, threatening to double your pawns. Yeah, the main issue is the knight doesn't really have anywhere to go from here. Maybe you can go to e2, but then it's going to interfere with the bishop. Whereas from d7, it supports the c4 advance striking in the center. It also supports the e4 advance striking in the center. From here, the knight just seems better because you can strike with either one of these pawns. With the knight going to c3, you're pretty much committing yourself to striking with this pawn, and it's pretty easily stopped, I think. Well, not stopped, but yeah, that black's going to end up with a decent position. I mean, black can just take this pawn, and if you take back with a pawn, then there's no knight e4 strike, and there's no e4 push anymore, and this knight's kind of not very well placed here, particularly if your opponent starts advancing down the queen side with a rook on the half-open file. It's, and the bishop coming here and threatening to double the pawns. It just gives black a lot of play. Okay, so the move played knight c3, knight c6. That's good play by black here. You've got both the pawn and the knight, well, both attacking here. Trying to encourage white to take so the bishop can develop. So white's continued with this idea of putting the rook on the e file and trying to play e4. So I'm just looking at. I mean, straight away the first move that comes to mind is just taking on d4. And putting a stop to this whole e4 advance idea. One of the big issues is what white can't take back with the knight, because there might be, well, we can take back with the knight. I'm just thinking there might be ideas of playing e5 at some point, but here black's got the center pawns, white doesn't. Black could probably just play something like bishop e7 and castle, and he's just happy with better control of the center. So I do like taking. Whoops. I really think that it forces white to take back, and black's just got a decent position. This knight is just terrible. It's not a very good knight at all. I can't see its future, what it's going to be doing for the rest of the game. Let's get back to the moves. Rook e1, queen b6. I mean, that's a really usual way to respond when your opponent has developed their queen's bishop and this pawn is left a bit weak and you're putting pressure on the center. So queen b6 is a usual sort of move. Now you've got 1, 2, 3 attackers on this pawn, so this has become impossible, has it? Yeah, it's pretty good. I might be a bit concerned about moves like knight a4. The idea is to try and just take this with the knight. So something like knight a4, and if the queen moves, then maybe just grabbing this. And after bishop takes here, your opponent no longer has a dark squared bishop, and all the pawns are on white squares. It might be okay though, because black does have the extra center pawn. Oops. Still, I think it's a bit uncomfortable not having a dark squared bishop. Let's get into this. b3. So after queen b6, b3 was played. I mean, that looks okay. My first thought is, oh, look at all these holes, but I really can't see a way to take advantage of them at the moment. I mean, maybe there is. Maybe he can take here and then go bishop b4 or something like that. Maybe that's a bit uncomfortable to deal with. A move like rook e3 or something is needed to unpin the knight and protect it at the same time. b3, okay, c takes was played, e takes, okay, this is exactly what happened. And queen d3 was played. I think I prefer rook e3. The engine prefers queen d3, so it's hard to argue with a computer. Just going to get a bit uncomfortable with this pin. Let's see what happened. Rook c8. Yep, so now there's all sorts of ideas, all sorts of threats of this knight moving and the bishop coming in here. In fact, I think just taking here is a threat, because at the end of it all, you'll have the bishop fork hitting the rook and the pawn at the same time. How do you deal with that? You're going to have to get the knight off of bishop. Luckily you've got a tempo here. You can play knight a4 hitting the queen, and while the queen is wasting time moving, then the rook can maybe develop somewhere to e2 or something, or d1 or something like that. Well, however, white did not play that. White played rook E D1. Whoa, no, that cannot be good. That's not good at all. Um, that's just falling straight into the tactic I mentioned earlier. Yeah, knight A4 I think is good. You might be able to get it. Well, let's look at some of the engine options. The engine wants actually to play A3 here. And apparently there's no danger with this discovered attack. Oh, of course not. It's actually a pin. You should play knight E7, the queen just moves. Yeah, A3 also looks really good here. Well, not look really good, but it looks decent. But yeah, rook E D1, that's just a blunder, and black did not miss it at all. Knight takes D4, knight queen takes. No, 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 no. You don't want to swap queens off. You're about to lose a piece. It has to be knight takes D4 here, because after bishop C3, at least the queens are still on the board. This rook, can this rook just move? Rook here, for instance. This pawn is going to fall at the end of it all. So black doesn't win a piece, but black does win pawns, I think. Takes, rook takes, rook goes here. And what's the material? Black is 2 pawns up, 2 center pawns in a chain in the middle of the board, and he's got a rook on the second rank. So that can, and the A pawn is on pre as well. This is looking very, very good for black. Well, winning for black. However, after knight takes D4, he took with the queen, and this is extra bad, because after queen takes D4, knight takes D4, bishop takes C3. Yeah, black is just, what has black won? Black has won a pawn. He's won a pawn, and he's about to win another pawn as well. Takes, yeah. He's just won 2 pawns. We got basically to the same position as we were talking about before. The mistake was all the way back here, this rook E D1. You know, I mean, maybe even rook E3 is a move, maybe? No, that still fails to knight takes D4, doesn't it? Because the queen is in front of the rook defending it. Yeah, this is just horrible. It had to be knight A4 or A3. I don't know what other options you have. The engine might know something. Oh, yeah, just unpin the knight with bishop D2 as well is also another option. Or just give extra defense to the D pawn, but it's a bit dodgy what's going on over here. I would prefer just knight A4, getting the knight out of danger straight away, and the attack on the queen gives you the time to move the rook. Okay, so after this, it looks like black's got a clearly winning position. White played A4 to save his A pawn. I don't know. Rook A4 looks like the right idea to me. You defend the pawn and attack his pawn at the same time, which will gain you a whole extra move, a free move. You know, while your opponent is defending this with A6, and that might allow you to. Oh, I'm not sure. Rook C1. You don't really want to swap pieces off. It's hard to see. Maybe just try and limit the mobility of this knight with something like F3, which creates an escape square for the king and keeps the knight out of E4. Keeps the knight out of E4 and G4 at the same time. Because there is a danger here. A move like knight G4, for instance, attacks this and attacks that, and the bishop's trying to defend everything at once. Knight E4 has the same problem. It's attacking this pawn, and if the bishop comes back, he can swap it off. Well, where are we? Okay, but so yeah, A4 just loses a move, whereas Rook A4 gains a move. So, I mean, Rook A4 is obviously better. A4, King D7, yeah, that's good. There was no reason to castle, so King D7, the king's all centralized for the endgame. White really has no chance here. He just has to keep setting up fortresses and just try and create as many problems for black as possible. But with best play, it should be a very easy win for black. Rook C1. Yeah, well, white could really use that extra move if he wanted to swap these rooks off. Black just develops his rook with tempo, threatening the rook, forcing the rook swap off. And black still owns the open file. And yeah, well, I mean, what does white do here? Probably F3 to keep the knight out. Just to limit the mobility of this knight would be the way to play. Maybe the rook can jump into B4 and threaten this. Or the bishop can jump into E5 and pin the knight to the G pawn. with the idea of marching this G pawn up the board. I don't know. White has to find some way to get his pieces into very active positions. It's tricky. So he played H3 to get rid of back row mate ideas, so his bishop can wander. I still think I prefer F3. Yeah, and here we go. Because F3 wasn't played, the knight comes into E4 immediately, and this pawn is en prise. So can he play F3 now? Oh, I don't know. It's getting a bit dodgy. This pawn looks like it's virtually impossible to defend. And you can't push it because then you lose this pawn here. Yeah, this is really very hard now. H3 was another positional blunder, letting the knight in. I think F3 was needed to be played. So bishop E3 was played, and that was answered by A5. Yeah, in terms from Black's point of view, trying to find the right plan for Black it's a bit tricky. A5 is not too bad. I mean, he's trying to cement these pawns on White's squares. I actually think it might be helping White a little bit by letting White swap it off. And that's what White did. White just immediately went B4 and tried to swap these pawns off. If you can swap all the queenside pawns off, it becomes very hard to win this. Black's main advantage is the fact that he has got these queenside pawns still. He should be looking to start advancing these center pawns, and as the pawns get further and further advanced, he should be able to run over here and win these pawns. Or if White sends everything over there to defend them, then these pawns become shaky on the king side. So this just kind of lets the swap off happen. King C7. Is King C6 just better? I mean, putting a king on a black square doesn't seem all that right to me when your opponent's got a black squared bishop. King C6 just seems a bit better to me. I guess maybe he was worried about Rook B6 being a move. Possibly, yeah. King C7, A5, Knight D6. Where's that knight going? The knight was really good here. Maybe it's heading to C4. I don't know. These pawns aren't being attacked. Why not just start running through the middle? Just E5. Really like this idea. Maybe there's a problem with Rook here. No, there isn't, because you're going to tempo on the bishop. Or do you? Because the knight's on pre. He can grab this. This is interesting. Takes. Oh, but then the threat is taking here. Whoops. Yeah, so he doesn't have time to grab this. According to this, Rook C1 just wins. Oh yeah, take away the defender. Yeah, and then just he takes F2, and then Black wins. That's really cool, actually. So E5 was the move. So Black has missed this combination. Takes there with the threat of this. And there's not much White can do. Like if he plays this and the knight then retreats, and now you're a whole piece up, and it's very easy to win from here. Just a whole knight up. So after E5, I don't know what. Oops. I don't know what Black can even do. Rook B5 is obviously out of the question. F3. Send that knight away. I mean, yeah, I mean, you just play knight D6 and then start marching these pawns up. There's not much White can do about it. But yeah, the idea was just simply charge these center pawns through the, up the middle of the board, and then this pawn will start to look really shaky once you get D4 in, for instance, and you're cutting this bishop off from coming to B6. Defending this is going to be very, very hard. So what was played, knight D6, it should be fine. I'd be a bit worried about bishop F4 getting played here, pinning the knight to the king. It's just very uncomfortable for Black to deal with, particularly the threat of just Rook here, just attacking the piece again. I guess that can be answered by Rook C6, but as you can see, Black is being pushed, onto the defensive with a move like this. Bishop B6 was played. Yeah, Bishop B4, Bishop F4 just looks good to me. Yeah, Black, I don't know what Black would do. Something like F6 maybe to try and play E5. But then there's just bishop takes here and followed by rook takes here. And he's grabbed one pawn and he's threatening to grab another pawn. I'll just quickly go through the line. And this pawn is on pre and this pawn is running wild. It can be hard to win. I mean, this should still be one for black because of the passed d pawn with the pawn supporting it along the way. But it just adds extra complications to the position. Bishop f4 would have been great, and it pretty much forces a move like rook c6 from black. Just so that bishop takes can be answered by rook takes. And that sort of ties black up quite a bit, and black has to unravel this. I don't know how, but yeah, white could take this opportunity maybe to run his king into the middle of the board. And there's no way to really fix this. Like maybe king c8 to unpin stuff. That might have to be the move. Even then, this rook can't move anymore. So this king can just keep running in. Oh, but the knight can now move, of course. But still, those moves where black got tied down, white has used them to actually get the king centralized. Now it's a lot harder to win this. So yeah, I think knight d6 was a bit of a positional blunder. Let's go forward. Okay, bishop b6 was played. That allows king c6 because there's no rook b6 check anymore with the bishop sitting on that square. So the bishop went back to d4. Okay, that hits the g-pawn. Knight jumped into c4. And now I'm guessing the bishop took the pawn. No, it didn't. Whoa, what? Oh, surely this bishop should just grab this now. And at least you get one pawn back. You're still a pawn down, and the biggest issue is these pawns are very strong, but this is much more annoying for poor black to deal with. I guess black can grab this. Yeah, but with this h pawn gone and the g pawn gone, now there's a possibility of white trying to create a passed pawn by playing g4, h5, and with the bishop already in place, this pawn just marching through h5, h6, h7. It's a bit of a problem. It's complications that black has to work out, and that's what white should be going for. I think grabbing the g pawn and just this pawn is doomed anyway, so just trading the g pawn for that a pawn I think is actually pretty good for black. Well, I mean, not good for black, but it gives black counterplay, which is exactly what he's looking for. Rook a4, I think he's maybe looking to keep the pawn defended first and then grab the g pawn. But you one move too late, and you're just allowing e5. And that's exactly what was played. And now, if you can't grab this, then this whole plan of charging these two pawns up the board is out the window. And now, with the center pawn finally starting to come down the middle, it looks like it's pretty much over. Bishop e3, yeah, d4. This ran out here. Now f6 can get played. It didn't. King b5 first. Yeah, that's okay. Rook a1, f6, yeah. This is just a slaughter now. These center pawns are just unstoppable. So white did have his one chance, grab the g-pawn and create some counterplay. Unfortunately, now this bishop is terrible. It's just encased with pawns. And yeah, black made it more so. Bishop on g3 is not very good. The knight's grabbed this pawn. There's probably no point looking at the rest of this. It's there's not much to it. Yeah, the bishop stays encased. F5. Oh, f3. Oh, this is yeah. Black has decided to actually play on the fact that this bishop is encased and actually go after the king and maybe grab this pawn here. He didn't have to play like this. He could have just marched his he didn't have to do any of this stuff. He could have just left it like this and just slowly marched his pawn up the board with his king. And there's not much black can do with everything trapped on the king side like this. This pawn, this king, this knight, this rook all working together will result in that pawn queening. Or this pawn queening, and there's nothing that white could do about it. But he's chosen a different way to play, which I find quite fascinating. It's pretty interesting. The knight comes into here. So g3 was played, but that just loses a lot of material. So rook c2, king g1. Oh, what about, yeah, takes, rook here, the rook fork. And yeah, the king is passive, and yeah, there's nothing white can do. It's just Everything's fallen. What's black doing? I mean, just b5 looks pretty good to me. Just b5 and then you running the king and the pawn up the board. Something that can be done. But he's doing something tricky here. I guess he's just playing around. King goes here, rook f2. Oh, yeah, just saying let's swap rooks. He doesn't mind if he loses a knight because it's an easy win. Well done to white for keeping the rooks on the board, trying to add some sort of complication to the game. Pawn up. Ugh, yeah. Rook c1 check, king d5. Yeah. The king's run back into the corner. Oh, what? Oh, that's really clever. He's yeah, basically using some tactics to trade material off. Yeah, knight f2. If the rook takes the knight, the pawn queens with check. Yeah. So he plays king here, but yeah, after this, there's nothing to this. And at this point, white resigned. Okay, very well played game by black. I don't see any mistakes at all by black there. Um, just quickly going over the game. There's a few things there which I thought could have been done a little bit better, but on the whole, you play like this, you're gonna win a lot of games of chess. You're gonna beat most players playing like this. Yeah, very well played by black. I think back here, this one move here would be the only mistake I would say that black has played in the game, knight d6, on account of the fact that bishop f4 tied him down pretty greatly like this, and it gives white 2 extra moves to set up some sort of defense. Apart from that, brilliantly played by black, and poor white tried everything to get back into the game, but at the end, black just didn't mess up. Okay, I hope everyone learnt a few things from that. Yeah, see you later.